All right, Shelley.
All right, thank you, Allison, for those fancy tunes to keep us grooving until we started. Welcome, everyone. We are delighted to have you join us. We can't see you all, but hopefully you can see us just fine. We're so grateful that you took some time out of your day to learn a little bit more about Hawkeye. This is our Hawkeye 101 webinar from putty to polish, as you can see on your screen. My name is Shelley Benyon. I'm the general manager here at Hawkeye, and I'm joined by a fantastic crew of people. Allison Spees is our marketing associate. She's behind the scenes. She'll be helping me out with your questions as they come through and the chat functionality, which I'll talk about in a minute. On your screen, you'll see my my daring colleagues who have joined in, who are bringing their years of expertise, both on the Duratec side and the Aquabuff side, but as well to all of composites here in this webinar. And that's Jody Wise. Jody Wise is our West Regional Sales Manager. Jody, you want to just wave and say hello?
Hello, everybody. It's nice to have you along for the ride today.
And on the East Coast, we have Rob Smothers, who is the South-Southeast Regional Manager. So you'll say hello, Rob.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
And we do hope this show is a good one for you. Our goal here today is to familiarize or perhaps refamiliarize with some of the products that Hawkeye has to offer, to answer some of your questions, and perhaps to bring some new ideas to either you, if you're a fabricator working in a shop, or if you're one of our distribution reps, or if you're a customer service representative. We're hoping that the information that we share today is useful in all of those arenas. It is a 101, so we're going to kind of stay surface level as much as we can. We do like to dive deep, and you'll find that we like to talk. So we'll dive down in a couple of places, but our big goal is to save as much time as possible for the question and answer period at the end. So there is a Q&A option on your screen. And if you have questions as we're discussing information, go ahead and put those questions there. We'll be doing some questions, some frequently asked questions throughout the webinar. And then at the end, we'll answer all of those questions that are saved there in the Q&A. So go ahead as they come up, pop them in there. If they fit with what we're talking about, I'll try to throw them in there as we're discussing it. But our goal today is to both inform you a little bit and then also give you the chance to have questions answered and make sure that we can connect that way. So Jody, Rob, and I will be doing the presentation today. Also behind the scenes, I mentioned Allison. Our customer service team is also here. Jennifer, Sue, and Brandy are our customer service team members, and they are listening in. And I mention them because Jennifer, Sue, and Brandy are our first line of resources. And so Rob, Jody, and I are available for your help, or to help and support you. But in addition, Jennifer, Brandy, and Sue are fantastic contacts to know and to have. So let's kick it off with some just basic information about who Hawkeye is. I told you about some of us, but who is Hawkeye in general? So our company was founded in 1983. We all look very good for our age. Or most of us. We have 3 product lines that we service and support. The Duratec Air Cure product line, which you are hopefully all familiar with. Aquabuff, which is our compound and polishing line. StyroSafe, which is resin and coating for EPS foam. Our products are made here in the United States and they're shipped internationally. We have international distributors who are joined in on this call as well, and they are positioned worldwide to be able to sell and support our products. So today we're going to walk through all of those product lines. We're going to start with Aquabuff, so some of the buffing and polishing compounds that we have. We'll follow that up with questions, or I'm sorry, with information about StyroSafe and StyroShield, which are the resin and the primer for EPS foam. And then we're saving Duratec for last because there's a lot to discuss with Duratec. And most of your questions will probably come from the Duratec product line. We have sealers, putties, primers, top coats, and then a few additives that we've thrown in there for some fun. So we'll kick it right off. I'm gonna pass it over to Rob Smothers and he's gonna talk to you about Aquabuff. Rob?
Okay, let's start with Aquabuff. It may be something most of you are familiar with. And basically we have 5 products in the AquaBuff line: our 1000W, our 1000F, our AquaBuff 2000. Those are all concentrates, and we'll get into that in a minute, and our AquaBuff Gloss Master and what we call AquaBuff One Step. And mainly these products, the 1000W is probably our most common product. That's what you can use for compounding. That's going to remove the heavy oxidation. That's going to remove sanding scratches. It comes in blue-green color. So you really don't want to use this one on white hulls. It may leave kind of a bluish haze when you get finished with that. We also have the AquaBuff 1000F. That's a fast cut compound. That's more of a grayish white color, cookies and cream, they call it. This one is for if you've got some really deep scratches in there, or you've got a lot of osmosis, oxidation that's on that part. It's been sitting outside for a while, and you really got to dig into it to get that off. The third, one of our more common ones, is the AquaBuff 2000. And what this is done, this is a polish, but it is also a compound. And the difference between the two is just by changing your pad. You go from a wool pad, using it as a compound, to a buffing pad, which is a cotton pad or a foam pad, and now it's a buffing polish. So it's basically, you can use that for both. And like I said, the 1000, either 1000 or the 2000, those are concentrates. What's that mean is they need to be used in conjunction with water, usually a spray bottle. And with the application, you would use about a quarter size to a poker chip size for about every 1 square foot of whatever you're doing this on. Side of a hull, on a mold, doesn't make a difference. You would mist your pad, get some water on that, spread around the AquaBuff, and then come back and start running it with a high speed. You want to run around 2,400 RPMs to generate enough spin, to generate enough heat to break down the compound. But at the same time, you need to keep it wet. And you can go from there once you get it to where you've got your scratches or your oxidation down to a minimum, or you're happy with the finish. Then you can go back and come back with the 2000 and come back and buff it out to a nice high gloss polish. And all that is again, same scenario, about a quarter size to a poker chip size of the 2000 polish. Come back, you want to make sure it's wet, spray your pad, spread it around, come back and hit that same thing, 2,400 RPM, and you'll run that to a nice high gloss polish. 2 other products we have. One is called the AquaBuff Gloss Master. This is a straight polish. This is for people that just want a one step. You don't want to use water. You want to squirt this on, and you want to go, and you want to put a nice high gloss polish on there. Same thing, about a quarter per square foot, but you don't wet it. It's just this, you put this on and you run with this. The other product we have is AquaBuff One Step. This is a compound, any polish, all in one, but again, no water is necessary. And again, you run this about quarter to $half size for 1 square foot, wool pad to compound it, and then you switch to a cotton pad or a foam pad to buff it out to a high gloss finish. So that's pretty much what there is in that line. We'll get to questions and answers on the common questions that you guys may have. But for the most part, 5 products, 3 of which are a concentrate, 2 of which you use right out of the bottle. And take it away, Shelley.
Thank you, Rob. Allison, will you pop back just one slide behind? Thank you. Just as you probably know, this webinar will be recorded so you can refer back to it. In addition, Rob shared some really great application information, and we'll talk at the end today about where you can find that application information so you can come back and circle to it. Rob addressed several of these frequently asked questions, but the top 5 frequently asked questions that we get asked about AquaBuff are which AquaBuff and why. Rob hinted at this and talked a little bit. Do you want to just give a quick
We could go do into the top 5 questions right now if you want to knock those out.
That'd be great.
Additional questions they can ask at the end.
That would be fantastic.
Number 1, which is sort of what we already went into. Do you need water for AquaBuff? And the answer to that is yes and no. As we discussed, the top 3, which is the 2000F, the 2000 and the 1000W, and the 2000, all need to be used in conjunction with water. Those are concentrates. So like we just discussed, you mist your pad, you spread the AquaBuff around, and then you keep it wet. You don't want to let that get dry, because if it gets dry, what it's going to do is end up building a little bit of heat, and you could actually end up burning your gel coat if you don't keep it wet the entire time that you're running it as a compound or as a polish. Second one asked is, what's the difference? The difference on the 1000 is we've got an F version, we've got a W version. The F version is really one that you need only if you want to get really aggressive on a part. You may have had a mold that's been sitting outside for 5 years and it's got cracks all the way through. It's got heavy oxidation. Then you start with the F because you really want to break that down. Then you can go to the W, then you can go to the 2000. You don't want to start with F if your part isn't that bad, because then all you're going to be doing is fighting that part to go back and try to get all the scratches out that you're going to be putting in there with the F. W is the more common one. That's going to take out all your light scratches, usually anything from let's say a 400 scratch down, and all the light oxidation. If it's just been sitting out, if it's your boat, or if it's a plug and it's just starting to build up a little oxidation, the W, the 1000W is the way to go. Another question we get a lot is how much AquaBuff. We also went through that. One of the issues we seem to have and get a lot of phone calls on is, I can't get the AquaBuff off my part. And that's because we have people that'll take a paintbrush and just brush on the entire part, start soaking it down, and come back in about a month because you're going to be buffing it that whole time trying to get this stuff off. So again, about a quarter size dollop for 1 square foot is really all you need. And just keep it wet and keep that motor going and you'll be fine. So little goes a long way. Mm-hmm. Really, you get about a gallon will cover almost 800 square feet. So another question we get is, can you use the AquaBuff 2000 as a compound and a polish? The answer to that is yes. The difference is changing your pad. If you're starting it with a compound, you go to a wool pad. Once you get it down to where it looks like you've got your swirls out, your scratches out, the oxidation down, and now you want to use it as a polish, change your pad. You can go to the foam pad or you can go to a soft cotton pad. They're usually yellow. And now you're using it as a polish and you completed what you need to do. It can go both ways. And the last thing we're doing is what we've already talked about. Why can't I remove the AquaBuff? 9 times out of 10, it's because there's just too much AquaBuff on the part. So a little goes a long way. If you get too much on there, you're not going to wipe it off, because the more water you add to it, the further it's going to go. So it's just a matter of keep on buffing and keep on going until you finally get it through. But again, little goes a long way. Quarter size, $half size maximum for every square foot that you want to compound or you want to polish. And any additional questions, we can get to that at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. I mean, part of the joy of that AquaBuff concentrate is that it's an economical purchase, but it doesn't really pay off if you have to put in the extra labor to remove it from the surface. So thank you for covering that. So the next product we're going to talk about is StyroSafe and the 2 products from that product line. Jody, this is you.
Thank you. StyroSafe, these products are for use with EPS and XPS foam. They do not eat the foam or deteriorate the product, so they're safe over that surface. The first product that was developed was the laminating resin, the StyroSafe. That was developed so somebody could cut a shape in any way, shape, or form they wanted, whether it was CNC or by hand, and they could coat that with a laminate. So now that developed a nice, hard, durable surface so that You could apply a primer or top coat to that and make a mold off of it, or a plug, whatever you needed to do, make a shape. That product was quite successful, and people kept asking for something. Look, we don't need to build a durable shell on this EPS foam. We need something this is just quick and simple. We just need a shape, and we don't care if this foam gets destroyed after the first part. It's just sacrificial. So the primer is the answer to that question. Plus, not only is it just a polyester coating, but it's compatible with virtually everything you may want to put over the top of it: paints, epoxies, anything you may need to put on that surface, and it's easily sandable. What you can do with that product is cut your shape, apply your StyroShield to it, and the best way is to spray it. Spraying it works quite well, but you can brush, roller it, pour it, however you can get it onto the surface. Doesn't really matter, but you don't want it to puddle or sag or anything like that. So pay a little bit of attention. The spraying gives you the most uniform surface. You're not limited to putting one layer on there. You can put multiple layers on there and build it up as needed. Some customers will machine it or reshape it after they've applied the primer. Other companies will add another putty or shaping compound over the top of the primer and shape that. Others will just use their standard GP laminating resin and go over the top of it with that. Some parts for decorative purposes are just painted after the primer's put on them. That's all the more durable it needs to be. So there's a lot of uses there. But if you're making a mold or a plug, don't expect it to last more than one pull. The foam just doesn't have enough strength, and the primer isn't adding a tremendous amount of strength to it. One thing people try to do with the StyroSafe resin that has mixed results is they want to use it as a primer by just applying a layer or two of resin to it. The resin has too low of a viscosity for that. You end up with a thin surface. That thin surface, if you put something over the top of it, will attack the foam frequently. It's too hard to get enough resin on there because of the viscosity. So that's where the primer comes into play. And they can be used interchangeably. That works well. Now, one of the things that people see when they open the can of StyroShield is there's a lot of very lightweight fillers in this can. The surface of this material will look like putty when you first open the can. You won't be able to stick your stir stick through it. That's normal. Don't panic when you see that. That is all of that material that has floated to the surface, and the resin portion of it has kind of drained through and is below that. It's kind of like a layer of ice sitting on the surface of this container. Mix it up thoroughly, and a stir stick typically won't do it. You need to use something that will agitate it. Some people have a paint shaker right there, and they just put a gallon on the paint shaker and let it shake for a few minutes. That works great. If that's not available, get a drill motor and some kind of a paint mixer on there and actually agitate it well. It will come all back into solution and be a rather low viscosity. You're going to be surprised at how easily sprayable this is and how it levels once you've blended it all back in. But we get that panic phone call occasionally when somebody opens a can and sees that they can't put the stir stick through it. So don't be surprised when that happens. Some other things that come into play. People always want to say, can I thin this with something? Can I put reducer in there? Any reducer that you put in there will attack the styrofoam. So yeah, you could reduce the viscosity of either the resin or the primer, but now it's just going to eat the foam and you've lost all your function that you were looking for. So don't do it. If you need to, go up in tip size on your spray gun. Tip size, a good one is, anything bigger than 2.5. If you can get a 3mm tip on your HVLP gun, that's great. It will spray much better. You want quite a bit of this coming out of the tip. If you've got a a 1.4 or 1.8 tip, like a lot of these gums come with, it's not going to spray this very well at all. You need some flow out of that gun. The dump guns can work well, but that's a bit of a learning curve. Those guns, you just pull the trigger, there's no needle, it's just airflow, and it will blow it out, and it works, but there's a learning curve with that. Don't expect to just pull one of those guns out and expect to have good results on the first part you make. But it is a solution for that. Rolling it and brushing it are options. You can roll it on, like we said before, just don't let it puddle. The accuracy of the application is up to exactly what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. If you're just looking for a shape, it's not important. If you're looking for a precision surface, then brushing it or rolling it might not be your best bet, but it still works. It kind of depends on the size of the part. If you're doing a 40-foot hull, you don't want to get it on there uneven. But if you're doing a 12 by 12 little shroud for something, yeah, you can spend some time sanding on that and not have a problem. So anyways, Shelley, any other questions I should answer on that one?
I'm just looking at our top 5 list, and you talked about 2 of them, the crusty sun shield, Styroshield, which we hear about, and I'm glad we're covering that, thinning Styroshield. One question that we get periodically is the timing on resin, on using the Styrosafe resin between the resin itself and applying a secondary coating. And I think that's a really key factor that when we're talking to folks, for everyone to really understand that that resin is your safety blanket, your barrier coat between whatever comes next and that EPS foam. So generally we recommend at least a couple of hours for that Styrosafe resin to be able to outgas and to be able to cure on the surface, and before you start considering adding a secondary coating. You don't want to push that exotherm up. You don't, like Jody mentioned before, you don't want to compromise the structure of your foam just because the process needs to speed up a little bit. Otherwise you're, kind of back at the beginning to have melted foam. Have I missed anything on that question?
No, that was very good. Yes. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have the list of questions in front of me. So there's 2 more, Jody. The other 2 frequently asked questions are, can Styroshield work on other surfaces? And don't answer the XPS question first. Will Styroshield, the primer, will it work on other substrates? Like yes, it will.
Wood or polyester or clay.
Sometimes people are making something and EPS foam or XPS foam is only part of the structure. They may have some flat surfaces out of another substrate. It will work on those. It might not be your absolute best choice, but it'll work just fine. There's not a problem there. It's just formulated so it'll be EPS friendly.
Yeah, perfect. And the 5th one, which kind of ties into this, and I had you hold on for a second. We frequently are asked about the compatibility between Styroshield and XPS foam, the beautiful purple foam that we find in Home Depot for insulation. That's used more and more often these days. Team, what do you think?
I've seen it. I've had reports that it didn't work well, but in all my testing, it has worked just fine. We did, after some people said they didn't have good results, we tried a bunch of different XPS foam and it worked just fine. There wasn't an issue. So I'm not sure what they were experiencing. Maybe they reduced it with acetone or some other solvent and then sprayed it and didn't like the result, but that's in the prior warning. Don't reduce the viscosity. It is what it is. It's formulated for one specific purpose. And you have to use it at that viscosity just because anything else will mess with it.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, Jody. That covers the frequently asked questions for Styrosafe product line. Thank you. So we're going to jump in now and we'll talk about the products on the Duratec, from the Duratec product line. Just a reminder that as we're going through this, because we're going to go more on the faster pace than maybe it would be comfortable for everyone, just remember that it's going to be recorded, and remember that you can pop a question into that Q&A space, into the Q&A box, and we'll answer it either as they come up, if it fits with what we're talking about, or as we circle back towards the end. So Duratech is a long-standing, well-known brand in the industry. We are so proud to represent it and to be able to talk about it. Jody, Rob, and I are very fortunate that when we see those of you that are here on our call with us out in the field, when we go into fabrication shops, that Duratech has just a long-standing, solid name. And we're quite proud of that, and we're quite proud to be able to support that product line. Some of the reasons that someone would choose a product from the Duratech surface coatings line would be the air cure chemistry. We're not dealing with additional additives that are required in order to be able to cure our material. It's MEKP catalyzed, which is very commonly something that everyone has on hand already. We'll talk about that. There is our vinyl ester putty does require BPO, but it comes with it, so you don't have to worry about having that on hand. Our products are highly compatible with other substrates, with any other top coats that are going to be applied onto them, and we'll talk about that as we move through some of the product selections. Exacting chemistry, our team in production has been formulating this since and before 1983, when Hawkeye was started. And so our formulations are tried and true, and like it says at the bottom, we have a solid history of use in many applications around the world. So those are some of the benefits when someone chooses a Duratech product. Those are some of the benefits that come with that product. So Allison, if you'll, oh, thank you. We're going to talk about the way we have this structured is that we'll talk about some of the more common applications that our products are used in. And you'll notice Allison has done a fantastic job of flagging them with these PE and VE symbols, and you'll see those throughout the next slides. So we just wanted to really quickly address some of our products are polyester, some of our products are vinyl ester. There are advantages and disadvantages to making the choice between either of those. You can see them here on your screen. Polyesters tend to be easier to sand. They're usually more cost effective than a vinyl ester, but they're not going to have the same HGT as a vinyl ester. So what you need for your project is dependent, or what you select for your project is dependent based off of what you need. So as we talk about polyester versus vinyl ester choices, as we talk about easy sanding versus surface primer, keep in mind, and you'll hear me repeat this, or you'll hear Jody and Rob repeat this, that your desired outcome is really what determines your choice. When you call and you're talking to Jody, Rob, and I, that's part of what we're talking about is the why. What do you need? What comes next? What do you need that to, how do you need that to function? And then we kind of back work to help you find the product that's the right choice for that particular job. So these are some of the reasons why you might choose a polyester or a vinyl ester from our line. So with that, Jody is going to talk to us a little bit about this, or Jody's going to start talking to us about a couple of the application uses and then pass it to Rob, and we're just going to kind of go around. Again, we're going to move relatively quickly. So as we do, pop in questions that you have that come up as we're talking. So Jody? Oh, Jody, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that. We've got the plug-in pattern building products. That line and many of these lines overlap. And that's one of the things that you have to get accustomed to when asking some of the questions, because while we've got quite a few products, many of them can be used in different ways. So it's not just one particular type of product for a particular purpose. They can be used in many ways. The few specific ones, plugs and patterns, we've got many products from Easy Sand to the 061 sanding primer to some other products, surface primers that can be polished as is. Again, the two products there's a lot of overlap. Some people are very concerned as to which exact one that they're using. You can use either one most of the time, so don't get too concerned about some of those things. Availability, if you need a gallon of something right away, you may not be able to get the exact gallon of product you want, but if you give us a call, Like I said, most of these products are interchangeable. So there are nuanced differences between them to make one outcome a little easier. If you want a lot of easy sanding surface, if you've got to hose a bunch of material on or a bunch of primer on something and sand it down quick, the easy sanding product's going to work for you. It doesn't mean one of our other surface primers isn't going to work. It's just the easy sand's going to be a little bit better. So if you're stuck, don't have the easy sand, go with one of the primers or vice versa. To start with, there are sealers in our plug-in pattern options. These sealers are for tooling board, foam, wood, different substrates, not XPS or EPS foam. Don't use it on those. But most any other substrate, these sealers can be used to soak into that surface, get a better bond, stabilize it so it's going to be a bit stronger. It's used a lot on tooling board, low density tooling board. It has a real advantage with this product. Wood, it will stabilize the wood. Some people use it on plaster, concrete, various uses. You will typically get a better bond with this, so it works well. When you put primers over a porous substrate, the resins in the primer will tend to soak into that substrate. Whereas if you put a sealer on it, it won't soak in. The sealer has done the soaking in. If you suck the resins out of some of these primers on a very porous surface, what happens is you get a dry, powdery surface on there. It doesn't retain all its physical properties because that resin has been soaking into the substrate. Frequently on low density foams and wood, that happens a lot. Yeah. Once you've primed that, our top coats can be used over the top. They form a very high gloss, smooth surface. It's more like painting. There are customers that just apply this as their finish and they don't take it any further. They don't sand and buff on these. They can be used at times just like they come out of the gun. But that takes some skill and it's also part dependent. Frequently you'll get some orange peel in the surface or some defect that you'll need to sand out. They can be sanded and polished and they will regain that very high gloss luster that they had, only with a smoother finish. So you can go either way. There are primers, our surface primers, they can be polished. If you don't need if you don't need something with a really high gloss finish, you just need an adequate finish. Some of our primers can be polished, sanded and polished and used as a mold surface quite well. You're not going to get a lot of pulls off of it with a high gloss, but for a quick one-off, maybe 2 parts, 3 parts, not a problem at all. Anything else I should include, Shelley?
No, you did great.
Okay, our repair putties and primers and top coats. The putty we have for repair purposes, it's a vinyl ester high temp putty that can actually be used as a mold surface itself. So if you're doing a repair on a mold, you don't need to do anything but use the putty. Now, the putty comes out of the can. It's got a BPO hardener that we send with it. It can also be used with MEKP. To be honest, I probably use MEKP more than the BPO hardener because I'm frequently mixing it with other gel coats to get the consistency I want, because in the container it's rather thick and pasty and you could put a golf ball sized chunk of it and throw it at the ceiling and it won't fall off. You don't always want something that thick. Now if what you need is golf balls in the ceiling, that's a good way to do it. But if you want a smooth surface, you may be able to reduce the viscosity of it with some tooling gel coat. And we have 3 colors of it: a black, the red, well, we have orange and untinted. I typically go with the untinted version because then I can just add a little tooling gel coat, color of choice, whatever it needs to match. And now you've got something that resembles the tooling surface more, and it reduces the viscosity, so there's less sanding involved. You can brush it in, trowel it in, squeegee it in, whatever you need to do, put a dollop of it in there, and you can sand and polish it and get an excellent surface, and there's no need for any other coating over the top. Now, sometimes people choose to put a coating over the top, spray a little gel coat over it. Can be used that way, no problem. But if you're trying to cycle a tool quickly or create some line or feature on the part, you can do it rather quickly with this putty. And it's got a very high HDT. It is compatible with epoxy. It's compatible with all our products, so you shouldn't have any problems on that front. It's very useful. A little bit goes a long way. We typically sell it in quarts. You don't typically need to use a lot of it. The shelf life is long. You're going to get 6 months or more out of this, so you don't need to buy a lot to begin with. There's customers that buy large quantities of it, but for the most part, it's a fine product. It can be used in conjunction with the primers and top coats. So again, you've got your options there on what needs to be done.
All right, Rob, will you talk to us a little bit about options for marine construction?
Okay, and again, multiple options for the marine construction. What we're looking at is, again, you get to decide, you want to use a polyester base, you want to use a vinyl ester base, depending on what you're coating. If you're coating and it's something that you sanded down, it looks like it's pretty level. You're not looking at any cracks, they've been repaired. You're not looking at any defects in the mold. Everything is repaired and you're just looking to put a surface coating on there. We've got polyester primers that you can use for that point. If you've got a mold that or a plug that really needs some repair and you got to build it up, let's say you took a mold and you had a 14-foot mold that you now wanted to make a 16-foot mold. So now you've got bond lines in this mold that you need to cover up, and you want to use something that's going to be strong and capable of holding this up. You would go with what should be on your screen is a 1799052. And this is basically a high build fairing putty. It's one of our more common putties that we do sell a lot of. This is a time saver because you can, as Jody was talking about with some of our other primers, it is going to be air cured. It is going to give you a good, solid, hard finish. So you can sand this down. You could actually polish up on this if you wanted to, if you're not looking to get a Class A finish off your mold. If you want to take it the next step, then you can put a surface primer. Again, go with a vinyl ester. It's going to give you a high gloss, hard finish on there. And you can put that over the top of your fairing compound. Once you've got that sanded down, you don't see any more marks on that part. It looks as good as you want to get it to. And again, everybody's different. We have people that'll stop at 400 when they sand these down. We've got people that want to take it all the way to 1,000 before they go to the next step. Or the next step, you can go ahead and top coat these and get a real high gloss finish on these things to make a Class A mold if this is a plug that you're working on. So there's a lot of options with these products. And there's a lot of different that you can play with. Some of these other products you can also, if you don't want to go to a top coat and you're running that 1799-06 surface primer, you can add a little bit of the 904-001 high gloss additive to that. It will give you even a little bit more gloss and a little bit harder finish. They're all going to air cure, sand, buff. You're ready to spray if you want to build a tool right off of that. So again, everybody has their own way of building the plug. Everybody has their own way of building the mold. We just give you several different options and materials that you can use to get these built. With these products, they're all air cured, so there's no reason to add a surfacing agent, any type of wax or any type of PVA into this or over this to get it to be tack free. It will be tack free as soon as it cures through. Most of these products you can get right back on in 4 to 6 hours, depending on your temperature. So it's going to save you a lot of time, and I think you're going to be very happy with the results. Back to you.
Oh, thank you. So the last application use that we're going to talk about are options for in-mold parts. These are two of our primers that you have seen before. Rob just talked about them, that can be used in mold. And we get this question a lot about Duratec products being able to be used in mold. These happen to be the two primers. So in this case, you could use these in mold for parts that are going to be post-painted using something else. Again, Duratec is pretty darn compatible. So if you've got someone who is looking to do, we even have customers who use these products in mold and then vinyl wrap at the end. So if you have someone who doesn't have a high gloss surface requirement, these two primers can be used in mold, as can most of our other products, which we have talked about a little bit. So those are our two options that we often, two primer options that we often suggest for in mold parts. I'm going to talk just quickly. Again, we have several products. We have several primers. It can be very easy as a customer, as a distribution partner, for our customer service team. It can be very easy to not know how to differentiate between some of our products. That is why Jody, Rob, and I are here, and I cannot stress to you enough, we love to talk to you. We love to help you figure out what is right for you. So I'm just going to go over a few, though, of our key Duratec primers. So Allison's made this fantastic slide for us on the screen. So starting from the top, we have 707002. This is a polyester surface primer. This is our go-to bestseller when people often are talking about using a Duratec primer. More often than not, it's this primer that they're referencing. It's a medium viscosity. It works with lots of substrates, including we have several customers who use it with 3D print as on top of 3D print substrates. It's a great general purpose primer. To its right is the Marine 1799-052 vinyl ester primer. Rob just mentioned this. This is a high build fairing primer. And this primer goes on fast and furious. You can build up to 120 mils and then sand it down. It also can be easily shaped if you need to do any kind of shaping, particularly if you're working on a hull of a boat and you need to do some repair in a certain area. You can use this for the repair portion and then use what's right below it, the 1799-006, as a surface primer for the remainder of that hull. Since I'm down there on that 1799-006, I'll just stay there. That is our go-to. Similarly to the 707002, it's our go-to vinyl ester primer. So the vinyl ester primer is going to have a higher heat tolerance. It's what you're going to want to use if you're resurfacing or building a mold that you need to withstand high temperatures, anything kind of pushing up to about 280, 300 F. That's what you're going to want to use over the polyester option. As Rob mentioned, you can add high gloss additive to it and take a primer and turn it into a much more glossier surface if you'd like. It's kind of our general all-around go-to vinyl ester option. To its left is the 707051 base primer. Base primer, similarly to the 1799-052 fairing primer, the base primer is going to build high, it's going to build fast, it's going to sand like butter. It's lovely, but it's not the right primer for every choice. We wouldn't necessarily want you to use it as the primer for a mold surface. We wouldn't want this to be, Jody mentioned this when he was talking about pattern choices. It might suffice for a one-off, but it's not going to, because of its filler content, it's not going to hold up by itself over time, over multiple uses and multiple pulls. But if you need to build up, if you need to kind of hide a lot of flaws on the surface, you can build up with the 707051, put a little bit of surface primer on top, and then you're good to go. To its left is the 707061 Easy Sanding Primer. And the easy sand is kind of sells itself. The name kind of sells itself. It was designed based off of our original surface primer, and someone mentioned to our owner at the time that it would be lovely to have something that just didn't take up so much paper. And that's where the 707061 was born. So slightly easier to sand. Again, that's an added advantage. You want to consider what your end result is, whether you're for why you're choosing that, and whether that's the right choice for you to do in your project. So those are some of our key primers. We'll talk now a little bit about our key top, well, actually, let me pause. Jody and Rob, did I miss any key points you would want added on those primers?
One thing we wanted to specify for in mold coating is that you need to make sure you're getting the proper surface tension when you have that in a mold. So if you commonly use a semi-perm wax, that's going to have too much slip for using our primers because of the air cure tendencies. Normally what you would do is take a paste wax, something like a TR wax, and put just one coat over the top of that to gain enough surface tension that these products will stay in the mold and you won't have an issue with pre-release. I just want to put that in.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And that will absolutely come into play with the top coats as well. So if you're using a primer in mold, or if you're using one of our Duratec top coats in mold, they can all be used in mold. How you spray that takes a little bit of finesse, and like Rob said, adjusting the surface of your mold so that there's the proper surface tension is really key. We'll talk at the end about where you can find that information and making sure that you have that when you're in the midst of trying to do a job. So with the top coats, same story. Post painted in mold. These are some of our key top coats that you're seeing on the screen. These are not all of our top coats, and there are multiple color options for several of these top coats. So this is just a broad stroke at some of the products that we sell the most of. But the one that's really hot right now is 904061. It's the first one that you see that says 4 parts. This one is used very often in the carbon fiber world. We have a lot of carbon fiber fabricators who use this as their clear automotive coating. It's UV resistant. It's UV resistant, and either in mold or out of mold just does a phenomenal job of laying down and letting that carbon fiber shine. 1902-045, which is right next to it, is our vinyl ester top coat. You've heard about this before today. It's been in the mold resurfacing. It's been in the pattern section. It is our vinyl ester kind of go-to surface primer. It's going to have that high HDT that you're looking for. It's going to be incredibly durable, chemical resistant, water resistant. So it makes a fantastic mold surface. It makes a fantastic pattern surface. Again, just depending on what you need from your coating itself. So that's the 1902-045. Then we get to 904046. This is another of our clears. And this is a common question that we have. So I'm gonna ask you guys to be a little bit flexible with me for a second. We're gonna kind of work in a triangle. We have the 904061 up here at the top. Down in the bottom right, we have 904040. And over on the other side, we have 904046. These are our 3 most popular polyester clears. And we get asked often the difference between the 3 of them and when to use each one of them. So 904061 is sun shield. It is ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, anytime you need UV. The UV resistance means sun shield. The 2 that are kind of bookended here for us, the 904046 and the 904040, are both clear coatings. And each offers, like Jody said before, each offers a slight nuanced difference. Can they be used for a lot of the same applications? Absolutely. Do they get used interchangeable? Sure. The 904046 is slightly more flexible than the 904040. So if elongation is something that you're interested in or that you need from your project, you may be looking at the 904046 over the 904040, or you may want that ultimate durability that comes from the 904040. Smack dab in the middle is 902046. This is our pattern surface coating. This one happens to be black. There are other color choices as well. And we talked before about Duratec for pattern surfaces. This product was designed to be a polyester option for any of your patterns, or even for tools as you're creating those and building those. And some of the highlights for each of those products are there. And I'm seeing questions coming in, so that's great. I'm hoping that they're coming in about some of these things we're talking about. So those are our primers, some of our key primers, some of our key top coats. And Jody's going to talk about two of our specialty products that you've probably heard about. Hopefully you've heard about. They're some of our favorite things. Jody?
Yes, these are two products that are extremely useful. A lot of people know about the 904001 clear additive. It's a great product. It's been around a long time, has a solid following out there in the manufacturing industry and repair industry. You can add it to gel coat to make it spray much better, level, flow, and cure tack-free on the surface. There's various ways to do this. There's no real right or wrong way, but it enhances the ability to use it. When I say there's no right or wrong way to use it, at 50-50, it flows like paint, and you will get an absolutely high gloss, tack-free finish. It's not tack-free. It won't be absolutely hard the first day, but after a day or so, it will be a very, very hard finish. Some people don't go any further than that. They will respray something, and that's the way they leave it. They leave it to get hard. Others will buff and polish that and get an even higher, better gloss on it. So it can be used in many ways. It can also be blended with our other products. So if you have a primer and you want to reduce the viscosity of it, and it will also allow it to get a higher gloss, because there's customers that want, it's like, okay, this surface primer is just about what we want, but we want a little better gloss out of it, or we want a little better leveling so there's less work. Well, you can add some of this to it. It will level and give a higher gloss. Again, there's no right or wrong. You can add this and blend it to exactly what you want it to do. Not a problem there. Same with the gel coat. So there's so many uses for this. It works quite well. There are even people that use it alone on some parts. They will spray this over an existing gel coat surface and leave it as is, because it will, if you post-apply gel coat to something, and some of our agricultural customers do this, they apply gel coat and then they just spray this, virtually just mist it over the surface, and it gives a high gloss, easy to clean surface over the top. They can still build up a lot of thick gel coat on there to hide any of the distortions in the surface, but they spray this over the top, and now it's an easy to clean, high gloss finish. So there's a lot of uses. Don't think that it's limited to just adding it to gel coat. Now, the other one, our Gel X product, it's a gel time extender. It's one of my favorite products. When I came on board years ago with Duratec, I saw this data sheet and I looked at the product and I said, do you tell anybody about this stuff? And they're like, well, yeah, but I don't know what they'd really use it for. Well, depending on where you're at in the country, trying to spray a quart of material out when it's 99 degrees in the shade, you don't have much time. And your biggest problem is your gun setting up. This will about double the pot life of your material. It doesn't affect the sprayed out material near as much, but what's in your gun, what's in your container will about double in gel time. So it goes from, at 77 degrees from 15 minutes or so to 30 minutes or so. When I'm doing training classes, I use this product extensively because it is very forgiving. If you've got 15 minutes, you got to get all that gun emptied quick, and you're not typically using best practices to get there. You're just pulling the trigger and going. You double that pot life. Now you can pay attention to how well you spray it and take some time. It takes the stress off you, and it's a little cheaper when you don't ruin the gun. So it works fantastically. It works at different ratios. Our vinyl esters, you put it in at 0.5. In the polyesters, it's 2%, just like the catalyst would be. So That's an easy to remember one, 2% catalyst. It allows you to add the full amount of catalyst to the product, and so it cures thoroughly. Biggest problem in high temperatures is people don't add the correct amount of catalyst, and then the surface doesn't have the full physical properties it should have. This allows you to add the right amount of catalyst to it, so you get full physical properties and still have enough time to spray it, get that gun empty. So if you haven't used this before, this is one that is handy. A little bit goes a long way. We sell it in these smaller containers for that reason. It's not the best container in the world to sell a product like this in, but due to logistics and DOT limitations, we have to sell it in this container. That might be one of the common complaints we get is, why do you put it in a container like this? Well, we're limited as to what we can do. The other good thing about this product is it has a very, very long shelf life. It's about 1 year. And that's just because we don't want it to, if the can rusts through at some time, we don't want it leaking because the shelf life is rather long. So we don't worry about that. But it's one of my best friends. And anytime you're doing something, it works great. Now, it does have some limited use with gel coat too. We've done some testing. Some gel coats it works with, some it doesn't. It's very formula specific on gel coats. Even some of the gel coats we know well and work with a lot, in one color it may work, in another color it may not. And one style of gel coat it may work. So I've had customers swear by it because the gel coats they use, it works very well in. Other ones it doesn't. It doesn't have any effect basically. So, but if you haven't ever tried this, give it a try because you will love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody. So we are, and I knew we would be because we have so much information we always want to share with you. So I knew we'd be running a little bit tight on time. So instead of going over all 5 Duratec frequently asked questions, we're going to hit the number one question that we're asked, or the question we're asked most often. And then I'm just going to let you know that the other questions, like what is the right amount of catalyst, or what is the right catalyst and what amount, Jody just hinted at it, that question, along with the proper tip size, along with how to work in extreme temperatures, answers to those questions are on our website, and we'll talk about the resources in just a second. But perhaps the number one question that we get about Duratec is in regard to compatibility. Is my Duratec primer compatible with X? Can I use it over a vinyl ester laminate? Can I use it over epoxy? That fill in the blank X might be different, but that question comes up continually. Duratec is incredibly compatible. Jody and Rob, do you have anything you want to say about compatibility? Maybe specifically about epoxy?
I would say that is one of our biggest questions, and I don't want to say misunderstanding, but just the lack of information we've supplied at different times in the past as to virtually all of the Duratec products are epoxy compatible. Now, the uses, the way you use it with a polyester or a vinyl ester may not be the exact same as with an epoxy. That information's on our website, and at any time you could call one of us and ask about those differences, because there are some real differences, and it means success or failure. But if you know how to do it, it's not a problem. You'll be able to use both successfully. And we've done bond tests. We've done all kinds of tests. Now, in saying that, we haven't been able to test it with every epoxy on the market. The main players we play fine with. But if you're buying something that's unique or has special properties, you might want to test it first, just because we haven't done it before. We don't want to promise you something and then have it fail. So if you've got some special epoxy, give it a try first. But that's one of the main things.
That is. We had a question actually come up that was one of our frequently asked questions that I'm going to throw in here. Rob, if you want to address this one, it is, can you pigment Duratec?
Which Duratec? We talk about primers, we talk about...
You know what, it just says Duratec, but why don't we start with Duratec top coat? Why don't we start just with Duratec clear top coat?
We have had customers that will put a dye in there or put something in the top coat on a clear just because they have a bluish tint to whatever color is underneath. We don't recommend tinting this to turn it into a gel coat color because you're really breaking down a lot of the chemicals that are in there, and you're not going to have the same key property value that you would have using it as is. Now, with that said, we make the top coats in a variety of colors. If there's enough need to purchase it, we can actually color match some of these products to whichever color you're trying to get to. But normally with the primers, unless you're using that as your finish, there's really no reason to color match that. You can get that in a white, you can get that in a black. Most typical is it comes in either a light or a dark gray. Like I said, with the top coats, depending on the usage, we can color match that. They can do that in the manufacturing plant, so you maintain all the properties of that product. I don't know which other product you would be talking about. We do have some people that will take the like the sun shield or something, and they'll put a tint in that just because they like a bluish tint or a greenish tint to enhance whatever they're building underneath there. That's as far as I suggest you would go with pigmenting any of these products.
So it's very common in our world to get this question, and we do have a lot of customers who, you know, certainly will add flake to our clears. Sometimes we'll pigment the clears. All of those things, you know, always come with our sage advice to test, you know, how a pigment or a tint affects gel or cure time is important and is a necessary detail for you to know. And that's not something that we would necessarily know from our own experience. The conversation on Sunshield actually brings up one of the other questions that we have. I recognize that we set this webinar for an hour and we are at that time. So if anybody needs to jump off, I completely understand that. And we certainly are grateful that you joined us and gave us your time today. We'll continue answering questions. Allison has put up our contact information for you to be able to contact us after the webinar. Like we said before, we love to visit. So feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to visit our website and look at our brochures. Our data sheets all have tip size information, epoxy compatibility information, catalyst information. Some of the fundamental frequently asked Hawkeye questions are found there. But let me circle us back to Sunshield. So the Sunshield is perhaps the one that gets pigmented the most or tinted the most, flake added to it, used in a variety of applications that sometimes we're a little surprised by. We haven't endeavored in all of those applications. Rob and I had a conversation this morning with one. So the Sunshield, the 904061, is our UV resistant clear top coat that we mentioned before. And the question that we got in the Q&A is regarding our new version of this. And so there's a 904061 Sunshield, and then we just added 904070, which is a high viscosity Sunshield. Jody, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Okay. This product was developed because much of the market is moving towards carbon fiber parts, either made with polyesters or epoxies. And they're making these parts in mold. Originally, a lot of these parts, the Sunshield or other coatings, were post-applied to the surface. But as the market has changed and the popularity of carbon fiber has increased, a lot of manufacturers are looking to build parts rapidly, and post-applying products is a slow way to do it. In mold is much easier and much faster. Our Sunshield was something that was a bit temperamental in mold because it was designed to be post-applied and applied like a paint to level and flow, so it had a very low viscosity. The newer version has all the same properties, except that it's a higher viscosity, so when you apply it in mold over a waxed mold surface, it lays down better. The old version had a tendency to fisheye or creep on the surface or bead up, depending on what you were doing. There was ways to use it. It was just harder to use. It depended on things that you might not always think of, and it created problems in production sometimes. whereas the new version is designed as an in-mold coating. So it alleviates most of those problems. Now you're going to be able to just hand it to the guy and he can spray it without as much attention to detail, I guess I'd say. So that's where that came from. They're both products, they still could be interchangeable. You can post apply the new sun shield. It's just a higher viscosity. If you want to build up the surface faster, it may not quite level as well, but it will build the surface up better. So if you've got to cover a bunch of pinholes or defects, and a lot of carbon fiber surfaces have defects in them, it's difficult to cover those defects because whatever top coat you're using, our sun shield works better than an automotive clear coat to cover those defects, but they're still there. This newer version will cover those much easier. So it's easier to use. It may not level quite as well. You may have to sand it slightly more. Again, this is a nuanced difference. It's just slightly more. It's not like you're going to have a horrible surface on the part that you have to start with 80 grit to get the orange peel out. It's just, maybe you started with 1,000 grit with the regular sun shield. Now you start with 800, or maybe you sand a little longer with 1,000 to get it smooth. So that's the difference. But it's the product has really caught on. That product is ramping up in orders and production as we speak.
Yes, it definitely, everyone that we work with, Jody did a lot of field testing prior to introducing this to the market, and the comments and conversations then, and the comments and conversations that have taken place and happened since, have all just been very positive. People are thrilled to have, like Jody said, have that product work a little bit more in their favor. So 904061 Sun Shield is still available. 904070 HV High Viscosity Sun Shield is also available. Thank you for taking that question, Jody.
One other thing about the sun shield is, on a lot of these parts, some parts are carbon fiber or just basically cosmetic carbon fiber parts. They just want carbon fiber on there. But a lot of our customers use these products when they're making weight sensitive items. So racing products, the things for competition, whether it's bicycles, boats, speed, on and on and on, rowing shells, things like that, where they're very weight sensitive. And maybe they typically used a gel coat in the past. Gel coats need to be applied if they're even epoxy compatible, which really that's hit or miss. Most gel coats aren't. If they're epoxy compatible, you have to put them on about twice as thick as our sun shield. So the sun shield saves you weight. You can make that coating approximately 50% lighter in the product. And that can mean pounds depending on how big the item is. So, and it's if you're using exotic materials to decrease your part weight by 2 pounds, that can be extremely expensive, where this is an easy route to cut 2 pounds out of a weight of a larger item.
Thank you for making that point. Rob, is there anything that we've missed in the last couple of, either in the sun shield or that you, from the scope that you want to add in?
No, I think we've covered most of it, and I'm sure as everybody that's still on can see, our phone numbers, our email addresses are on the screen. So any additional questions, anything you come up with after this, please feel free to reach out, and we will, again, answer any questions you may have that's specific to any of these products we just spoke about.
Perfect. Rob did an excellent job of summarizing our, or bringing us to a close for our webinar today. Thank you again for those of you that stayed a little bit over. Please visit our website. Join us on social media if you are on social media. And thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.